Hi everyone, it's Kyra and welcome back to Science Skills. Today we are going to learn a couple terms that talk about the things that happen in our body. As you probably know, water is a huge part of our body. It is super important. But not everything in our body actually likes water. For example, have you ever done the experiment where you try to mix oil and water? Well, you probably noticed that they form two separate layers and they don't mix together. That is because oil is something called hydrophobic. On the other hand, if they did mix together, they would be something called hydrophilic. All right, now those are two pretty complex words, so let's break it down. A lot of the time, these big sciencey words like photosynthesis sound really intimidating, but when you break it down, it becomes a lot easier. So first, let's start with hydrophobic. We have hydro, which means water, and then we also have phobic or phobia, which means fear. So for example, if you're afraid of spiders, you are arachnophobic. So when you put them together, you have hydrophobic, which means the fear of water. Good. Now let's do hydrophilic. So hydro once again means water, and then philic means attracted to. So if you put them together, you get attracted to water. So that makes it a lot easier. Now we know the hydrophobic is water fearing and hydrophilic is actually water loving. All right, now let's get a little bit more technical. If something is hydrophilic, it means that it dissolves in water. For something to dissolve, that means it has to mix in fully. For example, things that are hydrophilic are sugar, salt, and starch. If you took a teaspoon of sugar and water, you can use a spoon and it'll fully mix in together or dissolve. Now, hydrophobic things are things that do not dissolve in water. So an example of this would be oil, butter, and also any other type of fat. If you remember that oil and water experiment, they form two distinct layers. They don't mix together. Now you're probably wondering, that's great and all, but how does it relate to cloud bread? Well, if you remember, the big part of this experiment was that we used a mixer and those proteins broke down and separated. Now it's time to learn another new word. Those long strands of protein are actually made up of smaller units called amino acids. So you might have built a tower out of blocks when you were younger, and that's a great way to think about amino acids and proteins. Amino acids are like the building blocks, and the protein is the tower. So the amino acids are the small part, and the tower is what is built up by those little small pieces. Now, amino acids can be both hydrophilic or hydrophobic, water-loving or water-fearing. In this experiment, when we use the mixture, we break down those proteins and their amino acids start to separate. The hydrophilic, water-loving amino acids stay put, but the hydrophobic ones leave because they don't want to be near the water. So they actually go up to those air bubbles that were formed. Those hydrophobic amino acids start to form a net around those air bubbles and prevent it from popping. You remember that the cloud bread was super nice and fluffy, but we were worried about it collapsing? Well, those hydrophobic amino acids form a net and they make sure that it doesn't happen along with the sugar and the cornstarch. All right, so I know that was a lot, so let's do a recap. Hydrophilic is water-loving, hydrophobic is water-fearing, and those are described to show the different interactions in our body. Proteins, those long, thin strands that help maintain and build stuff in our body, are made up of smaller little subunits called amino acids, which are the building blocks to the big protein. When you mix a protein and you split it up together like we did in making cloud bread, the hydrophilic ones stay, but the hydrophobic ones went up and formed a net around those air bubbles, which made sure that it didn't pop. All right, so that was great. If you want to go back and watch this video and try to understand it a little better, go ahead and do that. But just remember, if all you remember is that hydrophilic is water loving, hydrophobic is water fearing, that is perfect. If you want to learn a little bit more about those amino acids and other things in our body, go ahead and click the next video. Otherwise, great job, and I hope you have a great day.